Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Great show coming your way today on GoJo and Golic. Lots to get into. Derrick Henry, my God, brother. 87-yard rushing touchdown, setting history. Also setting history, Jaden Daniels. Geez, the Commanders, do they finally have their franchise quarterback? Maybe. And we will talk about Georgia, Alabama. Alabama coming away with the win. Lots of great guests, all that and more. So much fun. Let's do a show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield here. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network and our YouTube channel. Fun one today. Marshall Newhouse, our friend and former NFL veteran offensive tackle, going to stop by in the second hour to help us get ready for the Monday Night Football doubleheader that's coming up tonight. Thomas Morstead, the Jets punter, hopefully going to stop by and talk about a tough one yesterday in MetLife. There's no other way to skew it for that team, as they have a brutal loss to a team in Denver that almost got negative quarterback play throughout the game. But, Dad, nowhere better to start than where you were last night. The Ravens and the Bills on Sunday Night Football, a game that we went into with really high hopes. The Buffalo Bills were crowned by so many people as the best team in football. The Baltimore Ravens 1-2 to start the season, but pulling themselves off the mat after finally getting off the schneid last week. Dad, the Ravens get a win in big-time fashion last night, 35-10. How did this happen? You had a front row seat for all of this. How was Baltimore able to turn the tables on Buffalo so quickly?
Well, first and foremost, happy belated birthday to you. Your birthday was on Saturday. You turned 35 years old. And that just – and not so much you turning 35, but how old that makes me feel. I'm 61, but I feel like I'm 80 because I have a 35-year-old son. Wow. But happy belated.
No, thanks. I tried to really blow past all of that. My goal every year, because I'm a man, so I'm stunted in the way we process celebrating ourselves and our birthdays. And so I got through the show on Friday without this and tried to blaze through it in the open without this. 35 is one that feels weird, though, because to your point, like, by most people's standards, I mentioned it when I was out this weekend, like, oh, at a restaurant I was at for dinner for my birthday, I said I was 35, and I'm like, man, yep, just still glad to be here. And my waiter just looks at me. He was, a guy that was probably in his mid-40s, mid-50s, and he's like, God, you're so young. Don't say dumb stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, it's a fair point.
So, fun fact, obviously, like you said, you're a man, so, but if you were a woman, you got pregnant, you would be considered a geriatric pregnancy. Any pregnancy over the age of 35 considered a geriatric pregnancy. So, milestone for you, brother, just think of it in those terms.
It's, you know what it is? And it is amazing, too, like, it all does center around our ability to, or the timing of when to have kids. Because when everyone turns 20, the joke that you make man or woman is, I beat teen pregnancy. If you got to that point, you don't. And if you have a child at that point, great. It's beautiful. Kids are wonderful and a blessing. But now getting to this point, yes, it is one of those things where, I don't know, being halfway to 40, you realize the clock is ticking a little bit. And again, this is one of those things, doing this job, I swear to God, this is not just pandering because we're a sports show. It makes me think all the time. We're talking about Travis Kelce so much in the last couple of weeks based on his performance. And I'm like, that man is 35 and getting paid to go hit and be hit by people. I had to brace to bend over to plug in the fan that I need pointing air at me during the show so that I won't sweat through this shirt. Like, that is what I'm dealing with at 35, like most normal 35-year-olds going through these things. And he's trying to play professional football, and Dad, it has just given me such a different appreciation for what these guys go through late in their careers.
And Jesse, you talk about geriatric pregnancy for women at 35. Well, it's geriatric running backs for running backs that are 30, except Derrick Henry.
Ooh, yeah.
How about that for a transition back to ball? Except for Derrick Henry. By the way, going into this season, Derrick Henry had the most touches by a running back in 4 of the last 5 seasons. Now he's 30, and all he's doing is leading in touches again and leading in rushing yards as he takes the first carry last night for 87 yards, rushes for 199. That was the only disappointment of the night, that he didn't get the 200 yards. And the last time the Ravens had the ball, when they were running out the clock, they threw the ball on 3rd down instead of handing the ball off to him to get that yard, because that's the stat we wanted to go with. He's tied with O.J. Simpson and Adrian Peterson with 6 200-yard rushing games. He would have stood alone with 7 200-yard rushing games. But the way he's going to get it. Mike, they're just bludgeoning their opponents. They bludgeoned Dallas. They bludgeoned Buffalo. And there is something, again, as a former defensive player, when you line up against a team and when Derrick Henry's on the field, they run 70% of the time. So there's 7 out of 10 chance that they're going to run the ball with Derrick Henry. So the offense knows it, the defense knows it, and you still can't stop it. They run the most 12 personnel, that's 1 back and 2 tight ends, with Likely and with Andrews in there. But even when they don't have 2 tight ends, they have 2 tight ends because they have Patrick Ricard, a 300-pound fullback. And God forbid when they have 22 personnel, 2 tight ends, and 2 backs, including Ricard, going behind that offensive line. It's just a unbelievably big sled moving forward. The amount of times he wasn't touched till the second level, and that's got to be the fear of every backer and mostly DBs of the business decision that you have to make when he is running at full speed on the second and third level and nobody has touched him yet. But everything, Mike, goes off the running game. The running game, the play action, the short pass, the deep pass, everything works off the running game.
To your point about the speed at which you are meeting Derrick Henry at the second level, should that be the case, let this terrifying note find its way to your heart. According to Next Gen Stats, Derrick Henry reached 21.29 miles per hour on that 87-yard touchdown run. It's the 4th fastest speed by a ball carrier this season and the 8th fastest for Derrick Henry's career. He has reached 20 miles per hour or more 27 times as a ball carrier since 2018. That is second only to Tyreek Hill. All the other players weigh at least 240 pounds have combined for 30 such plays like that in that time span. Nothing that big should move that fast, Dad. The fact that he is second to only Tyreek Hill and probably weighs 3 times as much as Tyreek Hill is terrifying. He's a freight train from hell at the second level, but to your point, I actually think going into this game, I thought the Buffalo Bills were going to win. I thought the Buffalo Bills had a steady line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball that was going to make this difficult. And instead, defensively, they were able to get no pressure on Lamar Jackson until they started blitzing in the second half, in no small part because the rushing attack, the personnel that they use, the way they're able to structure this is difficult. But the thing I neglected most, especially in terms of the Ravens offense versus the Bills defense, Dad, a Bills defense that we know was starting backups at linebacker and was starting last year's backups at safety now because they let guys go, and Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin, who, holy hell, Taylor Rapp found out the hard way what contact with Derrick Henry's like in the open field. That looked terrifying, and we hope he's okay. But, Dad, the way the Baltimore Ravens used misdirection, used the threat of quarterback run, used their tight ends, bubbles to the running backs, all to stress those linebackers and safeties east and west. It's bad enough when you've got to think about Derrick Henry coming downhill straight at you. But now with Justice Hill, with Lamar Jackson, with Zay Flowers, you've got so much speed on the field that they made them have to think about it in every dimension. And that's what this Ravens offense can be so difficult in for opposing teams. The thing that was the outlier for them early in the season, Dad, that seems to have steadied now is they seem to have gotten the offensive line right. And last night they had to move guys around a little bit. Pat McCarry, who's usually been playing tackle, slides over to left guard because of the injury to Andrew Voorhees, and you keep the right side status quo. You insert Roger Rosengarten, their rookie draft pick out of Washington, and that group went out and performed incredibly well with all of this within the scheme, and Todd Monken dialed up probably his best game in terms of play calling I've seen so far this season.
Yeah. The getting the offensive line stabilized was a big thing because we knew that coming into the season with some of the changes that they had made. Getting that stabilized was key. But again, Todd Monken's got to be like a kid in a candy store calling a game because of the way the run works. You motion out Zay Flowers as the second most pre-snap motion in the league behind Sam Laporta. That gets the defense working one way. You start flow one way, and because it's Derrick Henry, the linebackers flow, and that can let Lamar boot. Lamar running the quarterback powers, the quarterback draws. Everything just opened up. And I didn't think that Buffalo tried to take advantage of the Baltimore weakness. Now, Zach Orr, the 32-year-old first-time D coordinator for Baltimore, had a masterful game plan, but I don't think the Bills stressed their stress points enough. Baltimore's defense had given up one explosive run over 10 yards, but they'd given up 28 explosive passes, 15 or more yards, coming into this game. But Josh Allen and this offense, and this Joe Brady offense, are used to the short, quick passes. Josh Allen is getting rid of the ball at the quickest rate he's ever gotten rid of it. But I think you kind of have to change with the game plan of what your opponent, where their Achilles heel is. And Baltimore did a great job of tackling, keeping the receivers in front of them, letting the short passes get caught, and making the tackles. It wasn't until the second half that Josh started threatening him downfield, and you actually had a couple of receptions. Khalil Shakir, now that was on a broken play, 52-yard long. Keon Coleman, 24-yard long. He had a couple of nice back shoulder catches. Dalton Kincaid, 25. So they ended up getting 3 or 4 explosive passes against the Baltimore defense. But I don't think they tried that enough, especially in the first half. They stuck with the short passing game. Shakir out of the slot, where he's just been a monster all year. But Baltimore, especially with Kyle Hamilton playing up like a backer, they were just making the tackles, keeping receivers in front of them, making the tackles.
I'll say this. This was an interesting game because all of this was true, especially in the first half, what you said about the Bills' offense. And then coming out of the halftime locker room, what you expected in a slugfight between two really good teams, because regardless of the records, I think we had all known, hey, Baltimore is a shoe size away in week 1 from being 2-1 in the first couple of games. It had been a tough road to go, but you could see the bones of a good football team that showed up last week and then showed up again this week. The adjustment that got made in this second half, Dad, was, all right, hey, we realize we can't just get pressure rushing 4 like we're used to, so we're going to blitz Lamar Jackson early in the second half, and that got that offense a little bit off speed. And then offensively on the other side, you would use some of those Keon Coleman back shoulder throws to loosen up the defense, and the ground game's starting to get going, and you go down here and you get a score quick. And then Joe Brady calls the double reverse pass that ruins everything. Yeah. You get your quarterback, Josh Allen, hit from behind awkwardly. He gets looked at because maybe his shoulder gets, and he gets hit from the front hard as hell. You turn the ball over. It gives the Ravens a chance to hang another one on the board. And really after that, the game script is so far out of whack. Now you're screwed, Dad. It's very rare. You know, we always say no one play wins or loses a game. That one play got really close to being the full nail in the coffin for this team, and I couldn't understand the play call given the fact that the Bills had finally gotten their base offensive stuff rolling.
I agree. Josh Allen lines up like a receiver. They direct snap it to a back. He passes it to Josh, who's going to try and pass it again, gets his arm hit, fumble, sack. 3 sacks for Baltimore in this game when Buffalo had given up just 2 sacks the entire season. Buffalo had the highest-ranked right tackle and left tackle on opposing pass rush rate. Spencer Brown had given up not only no sacks, the right tackle for the Bills, 0 pressures. And Kyle Van Noy had 2 sacks on Spencer Brown. He was rushing extremely well.
How about Kyle Van Noy sets a franchise record, or at least ties a franchise record, with multiple sacks in 3 straight games in Baltimore? I'm not sure there's been a more underrated player in the last 2 years than Kyle Van Noy and what he has meant on a Baltimore defense that we know has way more names, but when you turned on the tape at the back half of last year, Dad, it felt borderline unblockable some games. He's a guy that's worn a bunch of different hats over the course of his career. And I remember Tom Brady was calling their game last week, and he was talking about playing with Kyle and what he was back then. But in this Baltimore team that let Jadeveon Clowney walk this offseason and has, Odafe Oye and a bunch of these guys that are younger and talented, he's been the elder statesman that's been that consistent force that's really difficult to get your hands on in the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, since week 4 in Buffalo last year, Van Noy has 15 sacks since week 4. And to your point about Buffalo blitzing a bit more on Lamar in the second half, because, you're right. The only miscue in the first half for Baltimore was a Lamar fumble, which he was just so mad at himself for. The only thing that stopped Baltimore in the first half was that fumble and penalties. Buffalo's defense didn't stop them. You're right. They started blitzing a little bit, but basically Buffalo was saying, we're going to win with how we've won. Buffalo has a 4-man rush, the most in the NFL, 80% of the time, and they blitz the least amount of percentage in the NFL. So they were basically saying, hey, we're going to play our game, and their game just wasn't working against this Baltimore offense. They needed to kind of shift shape a little earlier in this game and try different things.
So, Dad, where we're sitting now is very interesting because the Buffalo Bills were everyone's easy answer through 3 weeks for who's the best team in the NFL. They had been playing like that. They had been winning, to your point, in the easiest way possible, and that went out the window against a Baltimore team that me and many people picked to be another representative for the AFC in the playoffs, be a team that I said could win the AFC North still this year and feel very good about that. Coming off this game, Dad, do we think they switch places now? Like, would you look at Baltimore or Buffalo and say, all right, they're knocked off that mantle, and who do you put there now as the best team in the AFC and the best team in the league? Is it the Chiefs back again, sitting there at 4? We have 3 undefeated teams left at this point, and one of them's playing on Monday Night Football's doubleheader in the Seattle Seahawks. But then besides that, it is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings.
I mean, and the Minnesota Vikings look the best of the undefeated teams. Certainly Kansas City does, and Kansas City was down 10-zip to the Chargers. I mean, and come back to win that one. I mean, listen, it's a week-to-week thing, right? The thing for Baltimore, now what they have is a rushing attack. That's nothing new. But the defense had not been living up to last year's defense. The defense last year was number 1 in scoring, giving up 16 points. They came into the game last night giving up 26 a game, 10 points more. But then they held the highest scoring offense in Buffalo coming into the weekend at 37 points a game to 10 points. So if that defense starts to find themselves, because the offense, is already averaging over 200. The offensive rushing offense for them is like a college rushing offense. They're averaging 203 yards a game, and they had 253 in the game last night. I mean, so you know what they're going to do on offense, and they've been doing it. It's the defensive side of the ball that had to kind of plug the hole and stop the scoring bleeding, and they did it against the highest scoring team in the league. So we know it's a week-to-week thing, and this week Baltimore looked better than Buffalo. Baltimore looked like one of the best teams in the entire NFL, but it's 1 week. So let's see, especially on the defensive side, if they can stay consistent.
I do think Baltimore and Kansas City are still going to be the teams when it shakes out at the end of this season that we're talking about as amongst the best. At GoJo and Golic on Twitter, who is the best team in the NFL after the Bills get knocked off the mantle? It seems like last year, every time we thought we had a handle on this would immediately happen where a team would get humbled to the level that Buffalo did last night. And I'm with you, Dad. The Baltimore Ravens, we knew last year they could rush the ball like this. I just hear every Ravens fan crying out when you get to the fourth quarter, and most importantly, when you get to the playoffs, can we just keep doing it then? Can someone slip Todd Monken a note then in those moments that says, hey, you're really good at this. Just keep it up. Coming up next, we'll get to some of the best sights and sounds from the weekend and mic'd up on an NFL Monday here on GoJo and Golic.
To GoJo and Golic, Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Jam-packed weekend means we have to, as I say to my toddler, put our listening ears on for Mic'd Up Monday. Okay, guys, some sounds from around the weekend. Let's start with Justin Jefferson, who had some thoughts on starting the season 4-0.
2019, LSU. That was my last time I went 4-0. I mean, but it feels great. I mean, just the whole team is playing together on all three phases. That's something that we've been preaching every single week, and to see it come out here and for us to be dominant is great to see.
And all behind their boy Sam Darnold, the not ginger.
Yeah, Sam Darnold, whose hair color remains in dispute as part of this show's canon. But, Daddy, he certainly wasn't the story coming into this game. Jordan Love, we know his injury status leading into this one was in question most of the week. He ends up not only getting activated, but getting the start in this game and having a career day in a losing effort. 32 of 54 for 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. That Vikings defense still making its presence felt against the best quarterbacks in the league, Dad. This group, while it gave up 29 points and this one got really close, was part of the reason they had the lead to begin with and looked like they were in control for the vast majority of this game.
Yeah, I mean, and rarely are you going to win when you throw the ball 54 times, and they had to because in the second quarter they were down 28-0. Talk about getting taken out of your game plan. They were completely taken out of their game plan. So, yeah, 54 passes usually leads to a loss, 3 interceptions to go with the 4 touchdowns. But they did, like a few teams who were down big, did come back and make them games, just like Green Bay did. But Sam Darnold right now, grass is greener. In what he's doing. He's the only quarterback in the league in double-digit touchdowns with 11, completing about 69% of his passes, 7th in the league in passing yards. So I wonder, when do we get past the point of waiting for the other shoe to drop? He's been on his, third, fourth team for a reason, right? Turnovers have been an issue. He does have 3 interceptions, but he's got 11 touchdowns. He's playing great. And certainly having Justin Jefferson help. Jordan Addison now back for a second game is certainly adding to the explosive offense. But you just kind of have it in the back of your mind, when is Sam going to turn into the Sam that's made him go from team to team? But so far he hasn't. And we're former players. We're always rooting for the players, but it's just kind of in the back of your head.
I mean, could we be in Geno Smith territory? Because that was what I was thinking about all day yesterday is this just another former Jets high draft pick who had to go the backup route for a little while and go through all that hell to come out washed on the other side when he finds and lands in the right situation? Because, Dad, it certainly seems like that. Listen, obviously, the first quarter of the season is interesting in a lot of ways. We talked with Peter Keating last week about how that manifests itself in betting lines, with underdogs being as successful as they've been through the first quarter of the season. That more mimics a preseason than it does a regular season because of the way the NFL's offseason structured. But you look at the teams that Minnesota's beat on the road to do this throughout the Giants week 1, 49ers, Texans, and Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love back. Like, it wasn't like they went out and beat up on Malik Willis. I get that Jordan Love had been hurt, but hey, man, this is the NFL. Once you're out there, we don't care anymore. And they've gone out and they've taken care of business against 3 of the better teams that we talked about in each of their respective conferences to start this season. So they'll get the Jets defense coming up. They'll get the Lions after that, and they'll go on the road against the Rams as we get into, it's not the second quarter of the season anymore because of the 17 games, but this is already a team, Dad, that based on who they've gone out and had this success against, you're right, this might just be a good football team, and Sam Darnold may have found the home in Kevin O'Connell we all thought he might before the season.
So because of the quarterback situation, and remember, Sam Darnold was most likely going to start the season. We knew he was a bridge to J.J. McCarthy, but that bridge now is taking an extra while to get built. But we figured Sam was going to start the season, and the way Sam started the season, J.J. was going to still be on the bench. So the 2 biggest question marks were the quarterback position on offense, the quarterback position and the rushing attack, since they've gone through running backs the last couple of years. But they pick up Aaron Jones, a former Packer, who's been, and averaged over 4 yards a carry. But also the defense. How would the defense improve? And the defense has been playing better. The defense, they've forced 10 turnovers. They have 17 sacks and 10 turnovers. So this defense has been, outside of Sam Darnold's surprising resurgence, to me, it's been the Viking defense that has really shown itself well.
Yeah, to me, the Sam Darnold story is great. This Vikings defense is the sell for this team. I am completely with you. They are the most disruptive unit in professional football right now. So that group on one side holding steady as one of the 3 unbeaten teams left in the NFL. Jesse, let's get to our next bit of sound here on Mic'd Up Monday. Old man Joe Flacco rearing his head again.
Yeah, 39, just absolutely ancient for the football field, not for the earth, as we like to say. Here he is on playing after Anthony Richardson went down.
Listen, he told me his mom is 8 days older than I am, so there's no chance in the world that he thinks I'm cool, so...
All right, what about your kids, though? What do you think they think of this one?
This is the first game they've come to this year, and Dad's on the field. So I'll look up there for them and see if I can find them. I'm sure they'll have a bunch of critiques for me. That's about it.
Pretty cool that his kids were there in the crowd, but also violently humbling for him to find out that Anthony Richardson's mom is only 8 days older than him, or he's 8 days older than her. I don't know, crazy.
Yeah, no, that one's wild. Certainly, Joe Flacco. A lot of people say I'm old enough to be your father. Joe Flacco actually being old enough to be Anthony Richardson's father does make the dynamic in that quarterback room interesting. But, Dad, the real story of this is, he was asked, hey, Anthony Richardson says you're cool, and that was his response. The reason they're talking to Joe Flacco is the concern for the Indianapolis Colts, where, again, Anthony Richardson's got to leave a game, left twice in the span of 4 plays in this game initially, took a big hit on his right hip and later a hard hit to the head, both on designed runs. He went straight to the locker room and was ruled out by the time that he returned to the sideline. So how concerned should the Colts and their fan base be about what's now started to become a trend with their young quarterback?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you have a shoulder last year, you have a hip, you have the head, all 4 games into a season. So, yeah, there has to be some concern. And could there be, well, we joked before the season when we saw Joe Flacco out at the Tahoe Golf Tournament of just how big he was, that this was by far the biggest quarterback room in the NFL, but also the most different quarterback room, right, on how you can call plays of Anthony Richardson running the ball and Joe Flacco not running the ball. I mean, you can't be calling plays more differently than how the Colts are going to be calling plays with Joe back there as opposed to Anthony Richardson back there. But Joe is, since coming off the couch for Cleveland, he has been able to get it done. This is another game, just like the last game, where the Vikings had a big lead over Green Bay. The Colts had a 17-0 lead over Pittsburgh, and it turned out to be a 3-point game. The team that was down came back, fell short, but still came back and made a game of it. But we now have to see how long Joe Flacco is going to be at the reins.
Yeah, I remember hearing in the Vikings game that Brian Flores had 2 different call sheets for that game. One if Malik Willis was in the game and one if Jordan Love was in the game. The call sheets for the offense for Indianapolis for Shane Steichen, if you've got Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson in the game, might as well be 2 different languages based on the skill sets of those 2 quarterbacks. So, again, this is something to keep an eye on, though. We've talked so much for other quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels, because of his frame about him taking care of himself. But the Colts now going to have to think seriously about Anthony Richardson and how they take care of him as this becomes part of the early story of his career. Jesse, let's get to our next bit of – oh, Dad, what do you got?
I was going to say, do you think there's going to be an issue with Justin Fields? Now, he threw for 312 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, fumbled the ball twice. That started to rear its ugly head, lost 1. The old kind of tried to loop backward on the pass rush and lost a ton of yards. You wonder why Mike Tomlin didn't announce him as the full-time starter last week, because maybe there'd be a game like this. Do you think there's going to be any kind of switch at all?
I wouldn't make it at this point based off 1 game, but Mike Tomlin's clearly left the door open for a reason. So if you get a healthy Russell Wilson behind the scenes, I don't know what they'll do, especially coming off a loss. This would be the time to insert him in there, even if I think you'd be sacrificing some of the positive momentum you've created and the reps you've had time under task with him at the helm of that offense. So you're right. There's a reason Mike Tomlin does everything, and certainly this seems to be what that whole bit of phrasing was designed to do around the quarterback position. So, Jesse, let's get to our next bit of sound. What do we got for Mic'd Up?
Yeah, so the Chiefs stay undefeated while losing a key part of their offense. Rashee Rice leaving the game with that knee injury. So next man up, right? And Travis Kelce was him. He finished the game with 7 catches for 90 yards to lead the team. Here's Andy Reid after the game on the offense and Travis Kelce being resilient.
Kels had a Chiefs career day for receptions, or broke the record for receptions. Anyways, you guys know what I'm saying. Worthy, it was great to get Worthy going. You got an idea of his talent, speed, and ability against man coverage. Kareem stepped in, had 14 carries for 69 yards, a couple throws for 16 yards. So he had a big day. And
so public perception is Travis Kelce had a good game.
Yeah. Public perception is that, and I do enjoy before the game, you saw the rest of the Chiefs wide receivers, Dad, all wearing Travis Kelce t-shirts. As everyone said, as if he was sick or had died. Like the guy just had a couple of slow games to start the season. So, and that changed, Dad. We had heard these guys say, hey, Travis, we know he's going to be there when we need him, but right now we're trying to get everyone else going. Bit of a different situation now as they fear Rashee Rice lost for the season with an ACL injury, a guy who had been their best, most productive receiver. They get a win against an even more beat-up Los Angeles Chargers squad. But, Dad, this Chiefs offense had already been struggling to put up monster numbers out the gate. It seems like that takes a huge hit if all of a sudden Rashee Rice is out now.
Huge hit. I mean, he was so the most targeted receiver. And again, Travis Kelce, I mean, it was one guy talking about Travis in an moment in Todd McShay. I don't think many people really bought into, oh no, is he washed or did he not work enough in the offseason that he would eventually do what he needed to do. But losing Rashee Rice on a turnover and friendly fire of Patrick Mahomes' shoulder pad, and the fear is it's an ACL, that is going to be a tough loss. Now they've come back from other losses of players leaving the team, different receivers, and still been able to win it. But this is a tough loss.
It is no doubt. The heartening thing for this Chiefs team is you did get some Xavier Worthy production in this game. You obviously had the one long touchdown pass thrown over the top to him. And, Dad, I thought appropriate at the end of this game. We remember going back, I forget if it was last game or the game before, but the Chiefs had a chance in the waning moments of a game to put it away on their terms, and they ran crossing routes underneath for Xavier Worthy, and we saw him involved in a bit of miscommunication with Patrick Mahomes, where Andy Reid actually came out and explained, oh no, it wasn't his fault. He had stopped that route short because one of the other guys in that room actually ran the wrong route, and he was trying to stay out of the way. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they go back to that same play on the final drive where they get a chance to put the nail in the coffin this time, and Patrick Mahomes finds an open Xavier Worthy running underneath on a crosser and hits them there. They're going to have to keep going to and instilling confidence in their young receiver because he's going to need to be one of the guys that helps offset this loss of production.
I mean, average 24 yards to carry, another deep ball. I mean, he is just the guy that stretches the defense, but you're right. Will have to be a key member of in catches as well, because it does seem like Rashee is going to be gone. I mean, players know, when you're hurt. You saw him get on the cart on the sideline, lay backwards, put the towel over his head. You kind of figured it wasn't going to be good.
No, and that's the unfortunate part there. So you look at the rest of this Chiefs receiving corps, Dad, I feel like we're playing the same record that we were last year. It's just a group that talent-wise leaves a lot to be desired. But then you look on the other side, this game was always going to be sort of skewed. I mean, honestly, credit to Justin Herbert going out there and fighting through, playing with a high ankle sprain behind an offensive line that was missing both of their starting tackles in this game, going up against that Kansas City Chiefs defense. We know Joey Bosa was out on the other side. It was a bit of a mash unit of a game, but a division game, they go out there and play it tough. Jim Harbaugh seems to have set the foundation there in a pretty solid place, but it's still just a difficult result for Kansas City, even being undefeated, to come out now having lost Rashee Rice. Coming up next, we will get to a testy Tom Brady and the game of the weekend in college football here on GoJo and Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield. We will get to the game of the weekend and the game of the year so far in college football. Alabama-Georgia delivered in ways that we could not have imagined, and the fallout from this is going to be really exciting to watch on both sides. But we also finally, I think, got the version of Tom Brady in the booth that people have been hoping for at the start of this season. Because Tom Brady's kind of occupied a little bit of this old man on the porch since he's gotten into sports media in terms of the accomplishment playing in the era that he has. And we saw the competitor boil over in the booth big time this weekend. Because going into this game, there have been some quotes from Baker Mayfield that come out. He went on the Casa de Club podcast and talked about his tenure there as opposed to and juxtaposed with what had come before, and said that he had been brought into an environment where Brady had been there and it had been a high-strung environment, a lot of pressure because of the standard that he brings, and that Baker Mayfield said he was brought there to be himself and bring the joy back to football for guys who weren't having as much fun. And when they brought that up to Tom Brady in the booth, here's what he had to say.
I'm going to say, I thought stressful was not having Super Bowl rings. So there was a mindset of a champion that I took to work every day. This wasn't daycare. If I wanted to have fun, I was going to go to Disneyland with my kids.
Oh, boy.
That man was, and you could tell, like, Kevin next to him was like, oh, okay, and he said, like, the competitive juices are still in there. That was the player, Tom Brady, Dad. That guy who hasn't been media long enough to, have that wash over him. That was the player coming out there from Tom Brady.
Oh, he was looking to put some pads on and go play for a team at that point. Yeah, that was like, wait a minute. You're telling me we didn't have fun? I mean, it's just, listen, the same thing that followed from New England in playing with Bill Belichick, where Lane Johnson from Philly would say, I'd rather not win or have fun instead of winning and winning a championship, but not having any fun, where anybody without a ring like myself would be like, I don't care, fun or not, give me a ring. But yeah. That was Tom kind of, you're right. The player is not out of Tom. It never really is, but it kind of wanes over the years, and he ain't been out long enough.
No, and you can understand Tom's frustration because he's like, look what I helped give to you in the only way that I know how. Like, the only way Tom Brady knew how to win, and it's the highest level that we've seen in my lifetime and probably will again unless this Chiefs dynasty continues to roll, but the way they won was by controlling the variables, making life a little bit miserable in order to minimize the variables in a sport that's got a ton of them to try and win consistently for that long of a time. It's what people did for years. And we've seen Kevin Love, I think, was the most vocal about talking about what playing with a guy like LeBron James is like, where it's incredibly stressful. It wears on you after a while because not only is it the day-to-day standard of a guy who's one of the all-time greats who understands winning at this level better than most and is going to hold everyone accountable to that, but it's the attention that you've got on you. You don't get to fly under the radar when LeBron James or Tom Brady is on your team, and so the level of scrutiny from the outside is going to be different for guys that I have no doubt, Dad, made football less fun for a lot of these guys. Like I always tell people, the undefeated season I went through at Notre Dame was one of the most mentally taxing. Like it was at points miserable because winning at that level sometimes is with what it asks of you on the day-to-day basis and the outside noise and the pressure in the building and the standard you got to hold yourself to. It's different. It's not as like quote unquote fun in the ways that you might be used to on teams where that's not the case. So I have no doubt Baker's brought a different feel to this.
Yeah, I think without question. And I think the guy that would compare to Tom Brady as far as the intensity even in practice would be Kobe Bryant. I mean, you hear legendary stories about Kobe Bryant about if you're not working hard in practice, why am I going to pass you the ball in the game? And just the standard he held himself to and basically wanted everybody to hold themselves. That's why I think it's always difficult for greatest of all time to actually become coaches because they can't understand why the normal player in their sport can't do what they do when the normal player in their sport could never attain what the greatest of all time did and can't get to that level. And there's just the butting of heads of I'm not going to be this good to Tom Brady or Kobe or one of the greats saying, why can't you be this good? Why can't you do this simple thing or this thing that I make look simple?
Yeah, it's so true. It's you're willing to do what others won't to get where others can't. And it's not to say, again, we have this conversation all the time. You can win a lot of ways, but to win consistently over time seems to point back to, at least in some parts, certain consistent through lines, and parts of that are not always as fun and glamorous as it seems like it would be at the helm of a winning machine like we saw Tom Brady for all those years. So that is the NFL version of that. Jesse, we can get to this is the perfect analog for what we've got going on in college right now. The changing of the guard that we saw at full form this weekend. Alabama versus Georgia. Nick Saban's his wife, Miss Terry, the guest picker on College Game Day, as he is back in Tuscaloosa for the Bama-Georgia game for the first time in years, not as the head coach of this team, watching his former squad go and get it done.
And Miss Terry beat him. That was something.
Yes,
that was something to see. God, loved to see that from Miss Terry. So it looked like Alabama was going to roll to an easy win in this one, 28-0 out of the gates. But second half, Georgia claws back. It comes down to the wire here. Ultimately, Alabama holds on for the win, 41-34. Instant classic, right, guys? You love to see it.
Dad, it was like we circle a lot of these games on the calendar before the start of the year, and you just never know. And I had picked Georgia coming into this game for a bunch of reasons that look silly now, and people talk about the college football playoff and how it affects the meaning of regular season games. Parachute into that stadium on that Saturday and tell me that game didn't matter a whole lot to every player, coach, fan, media member in that building. The environment was electric, and a game that looked like it was on tilt early on because Carson Beck and that Georgia offense just couldn't stop giving the ball away, all of a sudden gave way to an almost comeback for the ages, and Dad, a game that's going to have a real hard time getting topped this season based on the excitement that we got, especially in that second half that felt all-time great even as you were watching it.
It seemed like the theme of the weekend we just talked about in the NFL, one team jumping out to a big lead and the other team making a comeback. This was amazing. This, unless you're a defensive players have bad halves to look at. The defense for Georgia in the first half giving up 28 points. And then Georgia outscored Alabama 27-11 in the second half. This was amazing. 28-zip, you thought, okay, everybody can go to bed early. And then Georgia stops turning the friggin' ball over, which was obviously a key moment. And they actually took the lead, 34-33 with 2:31 to go in the game. I mean, the Bama crowd, everybody was just stunned that a 28-0 lead turned into a 34-33 deficit. And then a 17-year-old leads them out of the fire. Ryan Williams, a 17-year-old, obviously true freshman, gets a 75-yard touchdown catch, has 6 catches for 177 yards as a 17-year-old, and Jalen Milroe has 491 total yards of offense. It was just a stunning display. And there's Kalen DeBoer just continuing to win.
I was going to say there's so many takeaways from this game, but let's start with Kalen DeBoer, Dad. We talked about the early season out of conference test with Wisconsin would be sort of a, hey, you got to check this box in order to maintain good standing with the locals here. You can't go and embarrass us on the road against an opponent you should beat. Job well done. Check that box there. Beating Georgia, a team that you had a mental holdover during Saban's time by the end. We saw all those stats about, hey, even in the midst of this massive winning and renaissance Georgia's enjoyed, Alabama's still been a fly in the ointment for them. For Kalen DeBoer to walk into this and go out there and not only have them win the game, but to do it in the fashion they've done it, to watch Jalen Milroe's continued development at the position that Kalen DeBoer is most associated with. Dad, we always talk about this. Your identity as the head coach has to show up on the field in order for you to maintain good standing. And so far, Kalen DeBoer has come in at the helm of a thing that gives you all the advantages, right? There is so much institutional advantage that comes into place at Alabama because of what Nick Saban built. But you still got to go out there and do it. And so far, Kalen DeBoer, that's a big, resounding opening stanza for the beginning of his tenure as the Alabama head coach.
I mean, this Georgia defense was basically the best defense in the country. Had not given up a touchdown all season long. Gave up 4 in the first half. Gave up basically, 550 yards of total offense. This was, and for Jalen Milroe, remember, early last season, he got benched. And the only reason he got back on the field because 2 quarterbacks they put in couldn't do a thing. he basically got put back in because nobody was doing anything, so they went back to him, and he has done nothing but just grow and learn and get better and better as a dual-threat quarterback. Just an incredible performance. And there's a lot of people that say, okay, it's a great game, but it doesn't mean anything because they're both going to make the playoffs, to which I just scoff at that. I mean, both teams are trying like hell to win. Yeah, both teams are most likely going to be in the playoffs, but they can play again in the playoffs. I mean, I don't think it takes anything away from college football.
Sometimes it's like we always talk about living in the moment. Sometimes that's okay. You don't need to, all of you, ruin this moment by going, oh, well, they might play again. Cool. Who watched that game and didn't think them playing again would be freaking sick based on what we saw? Who watched that game and didn't enjoy every last second of the jaw-dropping plays made by Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams? The comeback led by Carson Beck after a nightmare of a first half. Like, sometimes we got to stop blocking our own blessings when it comes to this stuff. Plenty of, Split Zone Duo, podcast I love, talks about serving the whole hog of college football and not just focusing everything back to the college football playoff. This is one of those moments. Yes, these two teams could play up to 3 times this season. So what? The game they just gave us on the Saturdays that are so valuable in this sport kicked ass. Jalen Milroe's walking out of this as the Heisman frontrunner right now. Like, that guy looked sensational in every way, made all the biggest plays you could in this game. But, Dad, I got to say, when we talk about Ryan Williams, and we're in a day and age right now, we had talked about Jeremiah Smith, his counterpart at Ohio State. 2 ready-made products at wide receiver in college football right now. Ryan Williams got to be the oldest 17-year-old that has ever existed on this earth. Because in the midst of this game, you saw him at one point go over and celebrate and do the Dirty Bird down there as an homage to the old Falcons teams. You saw him with the eye black that said, kill everybody, which I'd imagine... Like, I'm reading that as a reference to the program in Alvin Mack, a movie that there is no way, based on his age, he should have seen. And even a more regrettable version of this in an Instagram photo that he made his profile picture that he shouldn't have involving Michael Vick. But even that, like, all of these references to things well beyond his age range here, Alabama has found the oldest 17-year-old humanly possible, and he is playing like it.
I mean, he is playing incredibly well. We're seeing receivers in the last few years, and I think it's from all the 7-on-7 competitions around the country between quarterbacks and receivers where we're seeing such great receiver play early. We used to never see early young receivers in college or especially the NFL. It would take receivers 2-3 years to start really getting the NFL game. Now they're coming in and dominating right out of the gate. And you're seeing a quarterback like C.J. Stroud dominate last year, like Jaden Daniels dominate this year. More and more rookie quarterbacks are getting starts as rookie first-rounders, and we know the reason why. And a few of them are actually beating the odds and doing well. But receivers are so ahead of the curve, it seems, over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, again, the Ryan Williams, Mike Vick Instagram photo, bad. Shouldn't do that. That's a 17-year-old mistake. If he was referencing the program, I'm going to send that young man a Thick Six shirt because that's a dude after my own heart right there. But, Dad, overall for this Alabama team, we can talk about the offense till we're blue in the face. They've looked excellent, and that was what we expected for Kalen DeBoer. But I think equally as daunting of the task was coming in and replacing what Nick Saban had meant to that place from a defensive standpoint. And Kay Womack and the rest of the defensive staff deserve a lot of credit. They made the line of scrimmage a living hell for that Georgia offense and went out and got this done. So I think overall, Dad, Alabama right now, they're the number 1 team in the AP poll that's come out this week, and they look like the standard in college football yet again in this latest iteration of the dynasty.
Yeah. They have Vanderbilt coming up, South Carolina, and then they're at Tennessee. That will be a crazy game. Then Missouri, LSU, before they finish up with Mercer, Oklahoma, and Auburn. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. Georgia came back and made this a game. It's Alabama, it's Texas, it's Ohio State, it's Georgia. It's those 4. And then I think there is a little bit of separation before you get to the rest of the group.
Yep, we've got the upper crust of the sport pretty established right now. Coming up next, we'll head back to the NFL and talk about snap count issues with the Jets in 2024. God. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It is time for DraftKings Crowning Moments, where we take a look back at some of your winning bet slips from over the weekend. And we go now to Ben Andrus, who had himself a bit of a weekend with a 3-pick first touchdown scoring parlay that hit to the tune of $10, paying out at just over $42,000. The wager included Cortland Sutton, Jordan Addison, and Chase Brown all scoring first for their team. And I tell you what, betting on offense in that Jets-Broncos game deserves an extra payout of its own. Crowning Moments is presented by DraftKings. Submit your winning bets for a chance to be featured. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Coming up next, we will take a look at that Jets-Broncos game and an angry Aaron Rodgers before we preview the Monday Night Football doubleheader here on GoJo and Golic. Number 2, GoJo and Golic here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield. Plenty to still get to, including some incredibly surprising wins on the weekend that are going to leave some fan bases in absolute hell. But we're going to focus on the good stuff right now, sort of, as we bring in our friend, former NFL veteran offensive tackle, and one of the analysts is the parts of the pregame power-up here on DraftKings, 6 p.m. Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays, ahead of the primetime football. Marshall Newhouse with us now. Marshall, what's going on, brother?
Fellas, how we doing? I feel a year older, and the knees are still creaky.
Yes, I was going to say, Marshall Newhouse, a happy belated to you, my Libra brother. How we feeling, man?
I'm feeling very balanced, as all Libras are. Let's go.
Exactly.
I don't. Mike just had a birthday Saturday. I don't want to hear about you guys feeling old. Okay, you're looking at old right here. This is old.
Senior, you don't get to say that when people are swooning over you at your age, sir. We can only hope. We can only wish.
That is true. Yeah, the Zaddy conversation sort of skews this a little bit. So I am going to conveniently shift us away from that and shift us down memory lane a little bit more here, Marshall. Obviously, during the course of your NFL career, you did get to spend some times, including Super Bowl winning times with the Green Bay Packers when Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback there. And so I want to play this sound. Aaron Rodgers this weekend and the Jets went out and lost a real clunker to a Denver Broncos team that got negative passing yards from their starting quarterback in the first half of that game. And one of the things that popped up was snap count issues with Aaron Rodgers, a guy who's well known with manipulating the snap count over the years. And when he was asked after the game, or told rather, about Robert Saleh's comments about maybe minimizing some of that going forward to simplify things on offense, this is what Aaron Rodgers had to say in response.
The cadence specifically, Robert said that might be something you guys have to dial back a little bit. Is that something you think could potentially help the situation?
It's one way to do it. The other way is hold them accountable. I mean, we haven't had an issue. We've had one false start. Morgan had one false start, I believe, until this. So, you know, it's been a weapon. We use it every day in practice. We don't, you know, we rarely have a false start. And to have, I don't know, 5 today, it seemed like, 4 or 5. Yeah, it seems like an outlier. I don't know if we need to make mass changes based on, you know, kind of an outlier game.
So listen, you guys are old linemen. You guys can talk to this better than a former D lineman. But I'm kind of with Aaron on this. This is Aaron Rodgers. This is what he does. Oh, by the way, as he said, this is what you work on in practice all the friggin' time. I mean, I think he's right, Marshall. Hold the O-line, the guys who are jumping, accountable.
Yeah, listen, there's a reason why his cadence, the inflection of his voice has been characterized as a weapon. It's because it is. Because on offense, your advantage is that you know when the ball is being snapped and they don't. And to not use it, to me, is crazy. We had so many quote unquote free plays that he got to throw it deep that because we were disciplined, the defensive line wasn't disciplined. We were stealing yards, stealing touchdowns. And yeah, this is something that you practice. And there is something about this Jets organization from a communication standpoint where they are just constantly finding the rake to step on. The fact that your head coach is in such disalignment with your quarterback as far as the sentiments about accountability and discipline, it's just wild to hear that play out in 2 separate press conferences for a team that we thought was going to be a contender this year.
Yeah, for all of the hope that we had coming off of last week where we saw them playing and putting it together in all the ways on the field, you're right, that disarray behind the scenes that seems to always show up in these press conferences between the two is jarring to say the least. Because, Marshall, the snap count thing, you're right, it's synonymous with Aaron Rodgers. It's a part of the fabric of who he is. And I'm curious, when he talks about accountability in practice, you've been through practice with Aaron Rodgers. You've seen how difficult is that to get used to, the way he goes out there and wants to use this as part of what you guys do on offense.
It's difficult at first, but once you get used to his voice, and it's just a matter of locking in. It really is. And I don't know if there are guys who are thinking too much about the play at hand. The calls coming in from Nathaniel Hackett. But yeah, that we knew that on certain, what we called them hard counts where it wasn't just a simple on one or something like that, there's always a chance that a guy will jump because Aaron is so good at it. So I'm sitting there in my stance, especially on obvious passing downs, ready to jump and call the guy offside so we can get a free play. Like, we're looking forward to it because it's another chance to, again, steal yards. And so if I'm an offensive lineman, if I'm the group, I'm sitting there like, even if it's a quick whisper, a quick tap as we're walking the line, I'm reminding, hey, it's on 2, it's on first sound, it's on this, it's on that, because that is such an advantage for your offense. And it's bad that the Jets don't seem to have that, and he talked about it. It just feels like it's 1 or 2 games, but this seems like also an underlying trend with the team of just not capitalizing on these things just from discipline.
Well, I tell you, you don't want to change the snap count when you're about ready to play the Vikings, who are leading the league with 17 sacks. You know they're itching to pass rush, and you know that hard count can get them a few free plays. So I am completely with Aaron Rodgers, Mike, on this one. Hold the guys accountable. We don't need to change the snap count. It's a weapon, and we need to use it.
That is certainly going to be the case, I think, for this Jets team going forward. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever the head coach thinks, hey, listen, man, y'all sold your souls to get Aaron Rodgers in the building. I think I know who to listen to when it comes to what to expect from this team going forward right now. There's one person driving the bus there, and it ain't the bald guy that coaches the team, unfortunately, for me and the rest of the Bald Brotherhood here. Marshall, we mentioned the pregame power-up, again, 6 o'clock Eastern here on DraftKings Network. You guys do a great job of leading everybody into the primetime games, and we're a Monday Night Football doubleheader season, so let's take a look ahead at that right now. We've got Titans-Dolphins as a part of this matchup here. We know for the Dolphins, going to be interesting. You already were without Tua Tagovailoa. Now Skylar Thompson been dealing with the rib injury after last week here, so we could be in Tyler Huntley territory. What do the Dolphins do around this particular quarterback situation? What should Mike McDaniels be trying to do to maximize this team and give him a chance to win against the pretty chaotic Titans team led by Will Levis?
Yeah, I mean, for a guy like Tyler Huntley, who is a pro, was elected to a Pro Bowl, however means you think he got there, he's a capable quarterback. And I think having only been there a number of days in the teams, I think you've got to keep the game plan simple, but use his legs. I think Mike McDaniels will do that. He's a confident passer. And Mike McDaniels, you got to flex your muscle. Your claim to fame so far has been these innovative passing schemes and running schemes, wide open, high flying offense. That shouldn't change so much with Tyler Huntley. It's just going to look a little different. And you've got to figure out, are you a team that just can't exist without Tua? Because that starts to look like a Mike McDaniels problem at a certain point. At a certain point. I don't think we're there yet. But for a guy that we've been talking about questioning whether he's ever going to play football again, and it maybe seems like you're waiting for him to come back from one of his latest concussions, they've got to really put something together, especially against an 0-3 team, especially against a rookie quarterback. I'm looking for a lot out of Miami. Yeah, they're a little bit of a triage unit. They're missing tackles to Armstead, guard Isaiah Wynn, and other pieces. But you've got to put something together because playoff teams, perennial contending teams, don't crater when things don't go the way they're going this season. Yes, injuries happen. Losing Tua is a big deal. Is the reason you paid them all that money. But for things to just go completely south, to me, that's starting to look like a tough trend to justify.
Yeah, Dan, I think that's really an interesting way to look at this is for so long we talked about if Tua was a product of Mike McDaniel and the play calling and all of the things that existed around him in that offense. And now it's kind of pointed the other way at Mike McDaniel, who we've watched his counterparts in Matt LaFleur, in Kevin O'Connell to start the season, in really Kyle Shanahan. I know he's got his quarterback, but the whole rest of that offense been gone for a couple of games stretch. Watch those guys rework and find success even when their stars haven't been out there on the field.
About taking your parts and making them productive, finding the right chemistry for your parts, without a doubt. That's been able to be done, but not so much, and it'll be a test for McDaniel. Marshall, I'm wondering on the other side, Tennessee hasn't won. Malik Willis went away, went to Green Bay. They kept Will Levis. At what point, again, us as former players, do you think about the locker room and say, you know what? We might need to make a change here because Will Levis is just turning the ball over. You're not good enough. Most teams aren't good enough to overcome turnovers. They certainly aren't good enough to overcome turnovers, whether it's a crazy play that he usually has one a game or the 5 interceptions that he has. And it's not like you're going to the stud in Mason Rudolph, but you wonder should there be a change on the possible horizon there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to organizational, approach because we saw the Panthers with Dave Canales make that change because we're like, Bryce Young is just not even giving us a chance to win. And there's a chance that he's developing bad habits, and there's a chance that he's shattering his confidence. So let's sit him down. We do have a capable quarterback in Andy Dalton. Let's at least put him in there and give our team a chance to kind of gain some momentum and have confidence that we can go into a game and do things right. With Will Levis, again, yeah, you're right. Mason Rudolph is not a guy that you feel like is just going to go out there and win you games right away. And, the Titans aren't playing terribly. Will Levis has some flashes, but again, it's just the one or two dumb plays where you're like, all right, this is how you get yourself run out of the league. And so all you're hoping for is that little by little, Will Levis, who's a specimen, he's a big guy, big arm, he can take some physicality. Can he make himself 1% better every week when it comes to his decision making. And if they see an upward trend, then I think you stick with it. Even if this season feels like a little bit of a speed bump, he's got all the tools that people are looking for in the quarterback position. But again, that decision making will make or break you. And so as an organization, what is your strategy? Do we let him take all these lumps? Are we afraid that his mentality is not there? Is he not mature enough to suffer a little bit? Or is he a guy who's going to is he working at it? Do we see little bitty upward trends in his decision making that we can justify keeping him in there? Because again, there's a whole nother locker room, an entire locker room of guys who don't want to go out there with zero chance to win because Will Levis is going to end up in an art but make it sports meme every single week. And so it's just a matter of how they top down feel like they want to approach this.
Yeah, and the problems for him and Bryce Young seem so different. For Bryce Young, it seemed like he was, and I don't say afraid in the literal sense, but Bryce Young had an aversion to taking any risk downfield. He was afraid to cut the ball loose at any point in time. Will Levis needs a little bit of fear. Like, that guy goes out there and plays a brand of YOLO football that is going to get you beat more often than not in this league. And so you're right. I think in a lot of ways that situation very different, and means the Titans continue to take chances on Will Levis and just try and curb the disaster mistakes and then watch the rest of the things, I think, continue in a positive direction. They're 2.5-point dogs on the road there, so Miami not even getting the full 3-point benefit at home. Marshall, let's look at the late game, and let's make that our Cash It or Trash It game. Cash It or Trash It's presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. This is the game most people paying attention to tonight, I think, Marshall. The Lions versus the Seahawks. The Lions 4.5-point favorites in this game against the unbeaten Seattle Seahawks. So, Marshall, do you think the Seahawks can come out of this and maintain that unbeaten status with the Vikings and the Chiefs?
I really like Detroit at home tonight. They're a menace in that environment. Gets raucous, and they're still a really, really exceptional team. I really need them to kind of lean into their offensive line. In this instance, not letting Mike McDonald really get in his bag, as we say, because they have all the pieces. They've been in all of their games, and I believe in Coach Dan Campbell. But I like the Lions tonight. Jared Goff's playing, solid football. He could play a little bit better, but I also think their defense can kind of be a little bit more stout. Listen, Geno Smith, again, one of those Renaissance quarterbacks. He's playing exceptional. He's like unlocking DK Metcalf a little bit. And so I'm excited for this game. It's an incredible atmosphere there at Ford Field. I like the home field advantage for the Lions tonight. And I like I want to get behind guys like Penei Sewell and really lean on this Seattle Seahawks defense. It's not the defense of old, and see what we can do with that.
Yeah, Dan Campbell is 0-3 against Seattle the last 3 years, so he's looking for his first win against Seattle. And you would think Seattle maybe would attack that kind of revamped secondary of Detroit with some youngsters on it as well, though Geno Smith hasn't been throwing unbelievably great, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but that might be the place to attack.
They might also get to attack up front because this Seahawks team has already ruled out Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, Leonard Williams, and Byron Murphy in that front 7 going tonight. So I'm with Marshall Newhouse. I think that Lions minus 4.5 looking pretty good. Check Marshall out in the pregame power up. The rest of our great crew, 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday and Thursday here. We appreciate the time as always, brother. Happy birthday to you, my Lieber friend.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate you.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. What a weekend in the NFL, guys, okay? Vikings, Chiefs remain unbeaten. Bengals save their season, maybe with a win over the Panthers. Bucks pummeled the Eagles. Ravens crushed the Bills. So looking back on the weekend that was, any surprising wins or losses that you guys really want to talk about?
Dad, yeah, I think the surprising win, and maybe not that this team won, but the manner in which they won, has to go to the Washington Commanders. A 42-14 ass whooping against the Arizona Cardinals. Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator for Washington, gets the game ball after in a locker room that understands this is the organization that fired him as the head coach. But Dad, Jaden Daniels might be the hottest story in football right now as he continues to string together incredible performances that look not only rookie of the year caliber, but just in general look like Washington might again feel like it has its franchise quarterback on its hands.
He, like C.J. Stroud, doesn't look like a rookie quarterback. And that was the one thing we had said about him when you watch him in college, when you watch him in the preseason, that he just carries himself differently, that he gets the offense, that he's showing poise out there. It didn't really matter about stats before the season, in preseason and such. It was how he looked. And he always looked like he was in control of the offense. The question was, because we had said Caleb Williams had the weapons around him, which we can question a little bit. And in Washington, now they have Brian Robinson that can run the ball, but Terry McLaurin, their receivers, does he have enough weapons? And now he hasn't thrown for a ton of touchdowns, just 3, but his poise in leading this team, 82% completions percentage is absolutely amazing. Again, shorter passes, though, will go deep occasionally to McLaurin. Running the ball, we know he can run it, has 4 touchdowns. But, Mike, just the way he runs the offense, the poise he has running the offense, he reminds me of, and not the number CJ had put up last year, but just reminds me of a guy who's playing above the level of a rookie quarterback where at times the game just seems too fast for him.
Yeah, Dad, you mentioned that number, 82.1% completion percentage through the first 4 games of the season. Per the NFL on CBS, that is the highest completion percentage in a 4-game span in a season since the merger, minimum 100 attempts. That is higher than the second and third spots of Peyton Manning in 2008 and Tom Brady in 2007, both of whom in those seasons won the MVP. And in this case for Jaden Daniels, these are the first 4 games of his career in the NFL. And, Dad, the scary part is, he's evolving. To make my Pokemon reference here, each and every week, we go back to last week against the Cincinnati Bengals, where we got the comments from Cam Taylor-Britt about how, though this is a college offense, and then he went out and executed that college offense, quote unquote, to perfection. And you mentioned how quick he had been getting the ball out of his hands. A lot of it had been short stuff, dink and dunk around the line. You simplify when you've got a young guy. Coming into that game through his first 3 career starts, Jaden Daniels had averaged the second quickest time to throw among qualified passers this season. He was getting it out in under 2.5 seconds per pass. This game on passes where he held the ball over 2.5 seconds, 14 of 17 for 153 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. So he's a guy that's adding even more to his game, to your point, because of all the stuff we heard in the pre-draft process from Brian Kelly at LSU, that this guy just continues to take what you teach him and apply it faster than most.
Yeah. I mean, the safe route for a young quarterback, and plus it's the rage of the NFL now is throwing quick passes. I mentioned in the broadcast last night, Josh Allen is getting rid of the ball quicker than he has in his entire career, but he's also taken the ball downfield as well. Of 7 receivers who have multiple receptions, 7 of them are averaging over 10 yards per catch. So even the short passes turning into yards after the catch, and he's going deep at times to McLaurin. He's just picking the game up quicker than most, and occasionally you find that.
It's been really, really fun to watch. To your point, he looked so calm. And for a guy also, I think in this game, the one other thing I was encouraged by is took care of himself. There were instances where he took off and run, was a threat on the ground, had a rushing touchdown in this game, and seems to be starting to hopefully put together more and more reps where he takes care of his body at the end of some of these runs, because that's still the chief concern for him is, hey, slight frame, a guy who is athletic enough to want to get in the mix and use those gifts, goes off and takes off and gets into an Anthony Richardson situation, not having as much padding as he does. And so far, we're continuing to see that. On the other side, Dad, for Kyler Murray and this Cardinals team, huge step back. We were talking about the Cardinals after doing this to people, the way they had exploded onto this season, and instead they fall completely flat in this game and quite honestly get pushed around along the lines of scrimmage in a game where, hey, the Cardinals, we had talked about, hey, getting into 2 and 3 tight end sets and trying to run the ball with James Conner on people, and there was some success with that, but for the most part, this is a Washington squad that kind of imposed their will on this team in a way that was stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Cardinals, the word's going to be inconsistency. At times they're going to look very flashy, like against the Rams, putting up 41 points. I think, but for the most part, they're going to be who we thought they were. We look forward to, obviously, to the Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison connection. They have 15 receptions. He's averaging over 16 yards a catch. So you're kind of getting what you thought you would get there. They just don't have enough in other places.
No, they don't. So that, for the Cardinals, too, they're in a division right now that's kind of interesting and up in the air. All the injuries to San Francisco, the Rams, the Seahawks team off to a red-hot start that people are wondering, as the competition ticks up, including in their own division, will they be able to stick with that? What's your thoughts on that, Dad?
Well, no, I was going to go about divisions and looking at Washington in the NFC East. I mean, yeah. Dallas is down for sure. Philly is definitely down. The Giants aren't a good team. I mean, this what we thought was going to be a really good division. All of a sudden, Washington, could they have consistency through the whole year and actually be the team to beat?
Washington is a contender in the NFC East now. Like, we can officially upgrade them to that, right? Where we thought, oh, this will be cute. We'll talk about them and the Giants maybe in the same breath, with Washington having a bit more hope because Daniel Jones, all offseason, the message has been that that's a quarterback on the outs. And now we're seeing that Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, no one should really feel safe in that Giants organization based on the performances they've put on tape so far. But for Washington and Jaden Daniels, it's not just some fun story about a plucky rookie going out and having a couple of accidental oopsie game. This looks replicable for them in a way that says, if you are the Eagles, and I mean, again, the Cowboys at this point, if we even still think of them in this regard, based on how flawed that football team has been down State Street in the middle of both lines of scrimmages, this Washington team absolutely in contention for the NFC East in a way that we would not have seen coming, or we would not have predicted, I think, you or I, before the start of the season. I forget where you were on this, Dad.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be the third best team. I thought Giants would be the worst, and they would be the third team in the division. The defense, and that's Dan Quinn's area of expertise, needs to improve. They're in the bottom 5 of total defense, giving up a lot of yards in the air and I think on the ground as well. Yeah, 136 on the ground. So the defense has to shore up, but they've proven they have an offense that can score points. So we talk about, if your defense isn't there, you have to be able to score with the opponent and maybe win high-scoring games. And they did that against Cincinnati in a close, high-scoring game and blew out Arizona but scored.
They did that, so that's certainly surprising given the way it played out, Washington being able to pop off like that. But, Dad, the other one that has to be a stunner to Browns fans, and I saw they're a fan base used to being pretty dejected, although they're getting some company right now with our buddy Emerson's Jacksonville Jaguars as that continues to look like an abject disaster. But, Dad, I mean, do the Cleveland Browns fans have a reason to be, or a right to be even more outraged going and losing to the Las Vegas Raiders with no Max Crosby on defense and no Devontae Adams on offense?
I mean, yeah. Listen, they have issues. And quite honestly, you were bringing this up before the season started. They lose their O-line coach, a great coach, and they have their tackles coming back from injuries. They're a mash unit on the offensive line. They don't have Nick Chubb, and Deshaun Watson is nowhere near what he was when he was in Houston. So, I mean, and you had to rely on the defense side of the ball to keep you in games, and certainly they were in this game. It's a 4-point game, but against a certainly less manned Raiders team missing so many of their weapons, Yeah, that's got to be a real head scratcher for Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's no excuse for that. And you're right. This is a Browns offense that's looked out of sync for a bunch of reasons. And Deshaun Watson's obviously been the place people point to because that's how money works. When we know you've been paid $230 million to be the best quarterback in the franchise, and that's before we get to all of the other things that the Browns ignored in that signing in order to go out and think they were going to get high-level quarterback play. This actually wasn't Deshaun Watson's worst game. You looked at a lot of the mistakes that happened here. Things undone by penalty. The interception was a clear drop by Amari Cooper, I believe, if I remember right, that led to that moment. But, Dad, you've also got now things starting to boil over on the sideline. You saw him getting after Juwan Jones, one of their offensive tackles, second-year guy out of Ohio State, on the field. That blew up on the sideline where Jameis Winston appeared to get involved a little bit too. It looked like, and Juwan Jones, to his credit, came out after and said all the right things. I have no problem with how our quarterbacks got after me in that moment here. I understand the frustration. I have to go out and execute. That plays a touchdown if I go out and execute my portion of it. But, Dad, there is part of me that looks at that and goes, that's a quarterback in Deshaun Watson who's starting to feel the heat and the walls closing in around him and all the discussion. And he's a guy that we've seen lash out in the media, talk sideways when he's been questioned publicly about certain things. Most recently this last week when he got asked about if they should run him more as a quarterback and his response to that. So this, to me, just indicative of this Browns locker room looking a little bit frayed at the moment.
Yeah, listen, they didn't get the quarterback they expected when they guaranteed him $230 million. They don't have one of the best running backs in the league in Nick Chubb. Their offensive line is a mess, and a guy who was really big in the receiving room yet last year, David Njoku, has played one game because he's been hurt. Jerry Jeudy leads them in receptions over Amari Cooper by 18 to 16. But, yeah, no Njoku, and the defense, has a lot on their shoulders, because that is the side of the ball that needs to carry the team.
Yep, it's been that way for a while, but at some point, everything reaches its limit when a defense, even with that much talent that we said coming into the league this year would be the best defense in the league, when you're not getting that kind of help for that long, eventually the dam breaks and things go pretty poorly, and that seems to be the case for them right now. We did mention it, has anyone done a wellness check on Emerson from over the weekend? Because I wouldn't consider the Texans beating the Jags necessarily a game that comes as a surprise to anybody, but the way in which it happens, looking like you might actually go out there and get your first win in however, God knows how many days it's been at this point with Trevor Lawrence as the starter, and instead to get your guts ripped out like that. I saw some posts that were concerning from Emerson, so I just want to know, has anyone reached out to him? Jesse, have you talked to him or heard from him at all?
I haven't talked to him, but I know that as it is with Emerson, he's going to do a lot of posts, tweet a lot of sad things, and then he'll be ready to get hurt again next time the Jags play and take the field. So haven't spoken to him. I'll send him a little text now, make sure he's okay. But he's definitely depressed. He's like, sell the team, and then he's like, but also see you Sunday. So that's how it is.
Yeah, it's gonna make it a lot easier when they're in London.
Yeah.
You just now again, it's not a shock, I think, that they lost to Houston, right? And Nico Collins, what a year he is having. 12 more catches, 151 more yards. I mean, just having a monster year. But Jacksonville's certainly not living up to what we did think Houston would win the division, but Jacksonville would be right there and not winless after 4 games, after giving Trevor Lawrence all the money. And again, it's not all on Trevor Lawrence. Certainly some of it is, but not all on it. But as you said, Mike, when the big money goes to someone, that someone is expected to carry a team. And when you have a 0 under the W column, that ain't it.
Yeah, the whole Trevor Lawrence NFL experience has been so wild. And we talk so much overall around the league now, right, about how much the environment impacts these quarterbacks and how that might, the Kevin O'Connell quote that came out from last week of more organizations fail their young quarterbacks than vice versa. But man, Trevor Lawrence was one of those guys that I thought was going to have that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson ability to sort of transcend things. So bit surprised the way it's gone there. Jesse, have we received confirmation that Emerson is okay this morning?
He's okay, but I said, talking about you on the show, wellness check, he said, I was researching local bridges to jump off yesterday. So he is texting me back, which is great, but he's not doing so well.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to have to continue to make sure that we get Emerson over the finish line tonight and on the pregame power-up where he belongs. Coming up next, we will check in with New York Jets punter Thomas Morstead about a cause near and dear to his heart on GoJo and Golic. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here. Busy NFL weekend that we've been reacting to all day, and really excited to get to talk to one of the guys that was out there trying to make it happen for his team this weekend, New York Jets punter Thomas Morstead, kind enough to join us now, 12-year NFL veteran, and we'll get to some of the reaction from the game. We know some Jets fans might be disappointed this morning, but one of the bright spots of that game last night and of the season so far is some of the work that you're doing. Punts for ALS. You partnered with the Team Gleason Foundation. Steve Gleason, obviously a guy you know so well from your time in New Orleans, someone so a part of the fabric of that community and who's done so much work on behalf of ALS and trying to find and fund research for that. So, Thomas, just maybe you can tell us about why this was so important to you and what this experience has been so far for you.
Listen, it's been tremendous, the support that I felt from fans, teammates, coaches in particular. That was a surprise to me. A lot of coaches have reached out, wanted to be a part of it. They played with guys that are dealing with ALS now, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that. But it's just an honor to be doing it. You were a few years short on my intro there. It's 16 years. So, and to be still playing this game at 38 years old, I wanted to do something for Steve. He's meant a lot to me and millions of other people. He's continuing to live, and his life's only going to continue to get more challenging and more difficult. And I just wanted to do something to encourage the person, the human being that he is. They're doing awesome things at Team Gleason. I think they're up to 800 applications a month right now. That's their rate of applications for technology. And, if you can't communicate, if you can't talk and converse with other people, it's difficult to feel like a human being. So what they're doing is really awesome work, and I just wanted to do something to highlight it.
Well, you certainly are. You're donating $1,000 for every punt inside the 20. You had 3 against Denver. You have 8 on the season. You said your minimum donation would be $10,000. You're going to blow by that one. So your donation's going to be pretty damn healthy one.
Yeah, listen, I think the over under is probably at somewhere around 28 or 29 for the season. So I just did a minimum of 10 in case I had an injury or something happened. I wanted fans to know that this is important to me and that I've got skin in the game personally, and that it's not just something that I'm, putting a microphone to, but I don't have any skin in the game. So I wanted people to know this is an important cause to me. And so far the support's been great. I'm hoping we can, start stringing some more wins together. I was hoping to kind of ride the wave of an exciting Jets season, and we're early on, but obviously we had a tough go at it yesterday. So got to get back on the wagon and figure out what we did wrong and try to get back to winning next week.
Yeah, and my apologies before, but I think over the course of 16 seasons, as you pointed out, everyone who's been around you understands you're a guy who is always going to back up the things you believe in, and even showing up here today to do this after a tough weekend speaks to the character there and your professionalism. And let's talk about this weekend. You guys were riding high off a couple of games where this team had really had things going well. So what was the message from Rob Saleh and the staff in that locker room after a loss this weekend?
Listen, I think that's one of those games where you look back and you're going to, whether it's seeding, playoffs, winning the division or not, all those types of things that you're shooting for, we're going to regret that loss yesterday. There's no doubt about it. That's a stinging loss. And that's no shade at the other team, but, we didn't get it done. And quite honestly, I think the message was just, that ain't good enough. All the pre-snap and post-snap penalties we had is it's tough to win when you do that. And hopefully everybody will look in the mirror. Look, I didn't have a perfect game. Nobody had a perfect game yesterday. Hopefully everybody will look in the mirror and genuinely say, all right, what can I do to get better? And I think that's what it starts with every week, whether you win or lose, being able to do that. And I think if collectively we can do that, we'll have a chance to do some special things this year. But until then, you're back on the schneid. You got to start back over. We're on a loss, and we've just got to, circle the wagons and figure out how to get better for this week. We've got a really good team that we're playing in Minnesota and London. And so we're going to have to figure it out.
Expectations obviously are pretty high since Aaron Rodgers got there. Obviously the injury last year slowed that down, but healthy to this point this year. So is the team a bit surprised that you're 2-2 at this point?
Look, we expected to win yesterday. So, you can call it surprised. I mean, having expectations on where you're going to finish every year, I stopped doing that a long time ago. The NFL, that's why it's such a great sport. It's the best professional league in the world, because any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday or whenever you play, anybody can beat anybody. And, I've been on teams where the expectations were high and we didn't meet them. The year I won the Super Bowl as a rookie, we were picked to finish last in our division. You just don't ever know. And you don't know week to week. But that's why it's such a great league. And I think the physicality of the game, talent doesn't just show up, and you can't just put metrics to every game every week. If somebody's ready for a fight and somebody's not ready for a fight, the team that's ready to fight is going to win in this league. And that's not a shot at our team yesterday. I think guys played hard. It just stinks. We didn't do what we needed to do. I don't know if we were on our details as much as we should have been. I know in special teams we had some opportunities we didn't take advantage of. But it's you guys know, you guys have played at the highest level. Every week you got to be you got to be locked in and ready to go. And, we didn't get it done yesterday.
Certainly, like you said, it falls on everybody. But in this league, you've played with a Hall of Famer and Drew Brees at quarterback and seen the pressure on that position. A lot of this is going to get dumped in the lap of Aaron Rodgers, your guy's quarterback, and certainly Rob Saleh, your guy's head coach. And a lot gets made of that relationship publicly, some of the sound bites that come out there. Do you see a unified front with those guys at the helm of this team?
I do. Yesterday was an interesting one. If you see how Aaron got set up with a question about what Saleh's comments were, and that they were paraphrased in the question, and that's a classic media tactic to get you to say something maybe that would be in opposition to what was said, but he didn't even get the real quote. So I definitely have learned something. I spent a lot of years in a pretty friendly New Orleans media market where everybody's a fan of the team and really genuinely wants to see that team win. And I've realized here in New York, they're looking for anything to divide, anything to get a sound bite because there's so much competition. And, just the way it is, just different. And you can see why sometimes players, can be a little distrusting at times. But I think we're, it's a constant thing, right? It's no different than a marriage. Right. You don't just be like, oh, we figured it all out and it's going to be easy forever now. You have to constantly work at things and there's constant communication. And that goes for all players and all coaches. And if everybody truly has intentions of winning, and that's the number one priority of everybody, and you're willing to have hard conversations, you're willing to all look in the mirror and put your ego down a little bit. I think those are all keys to continuing to hopefully converge into the same path where everybody's kind of shooting their guns in the same direction.
No doubt, and I truly believe with leaders like you around there, you guys are well positioned to do that over a long season. Again, Punts for ALS. You can check out more teamgleason.org/punts for ALS for information or to donate. So check that out. Thomas, we appreciate your time this morning. We appreciate what you're doing there. Best of luck the rest of the season. Hope we'll get to talk to you again. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Thomas.
Definitely. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, which you can see on Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Xumo Play, and a number of other wonderful streaming platforms. If you miss us live there for whatever reason, or any of our great guests, thank you as always to Marshall Newhouse, former NFL veteran offensive tackle and member of the pregame Power Up here on DraftKings Network. He stopped by to help us preview the Monday Night Football doubleheader. And Jets punter Thomas Morstead, kind enough to stop by and talk about the Jets season so far. A tough loss this weekend against the Broncos and punting for a great cause. Again, punts for ALS. You guys can check out the great work that he is doing on behalf of Steve Gleason and that organization. Get those interviews wherever you get our podcast or right here as soon as we get done on YouTube every day. Dad, let's get to this, that, and the third. Busy weekend in sports, so we didn't even get to come in and properly celebrate. Team USA, hey, we might have a bit of a back and forth when it comes to the Ryder Cup, but the President's Cup, we do this. A 10th straight victory for Team USA in a weekend that was actually defined more by the emotion than anything else, Dad. This is a fun weekend of golf led by Tom Kim and Siwoo Kim as a part of the international team in this one that went out there and were loud and were celebrating and kind of got under the skin, I think, of a lot of people in a way that I think is really good and healthy for golf.
Oh, yeah. President's Cup, Ryder Cup, whenever there's a team involved in it, there's going to be more of the smack talk. These guys all know each other, and like any sport, not everybody gets along with everybody, so someone really likes to stick the dagger in. But for the most part, team events in golf are fun to watch because of the camaraderie on one side and the smack talk on the other side. And how fitting was it that Keegan Bradley had the clinching point. He had gone 10 years without competing for the U.S. team, had already been appointed the Ryder Cup captain. They were talking him being on the Ryder Cup, and he wasn't. That he got the clinching point. That had to feel real good for him. I still don't think he's unpacking the Ryder Cup bag, but this had to feel pretty good for him.
No, but he said after, and you could see him getting emotional about it. We've talked to Keegan on the show about that, how much playing for and representing the U.S. in these international competitions matters to that dude. So was so happy. He talked about remembering being that losing point in the Ryder Cup. And so now to carry this forward, he said, we're going to take a lot of things that Furyk did in this and use that as the template for the Ryder Cup. But, Steph Curry, big golf fan, but even getting involved, Siwoo Kim mimicking the night-night celebration in a match that he ultimately ended up losing, got reminded by Steph, hey, you got to know the time and the score still left on the clock here if you're going to bust that one out.
Oh, that's exactly right. You can't hit a move like that and then lose. That carries way longer than the move itself, the initial thought of the move, to then losing. And how much people will remember that. Said, oh, yeah, you did that a little early, my friend.
I wish golfers would carry over this energy into some of the other tournaments where we see these guys going out there and bleep talking each other and showing a little bit more of that emotion. I mean, Christ almighty, we got a shirtless Kevin Kisner at the end of this round who promised Max Homa if he hold out, he would pop the tarp. And after they got done, sure enough, he made good on the promise. Like, Dad, we've seen throughout the Netflix show, golf has a lot of personalities to sell you. We know some of the big ones are playing and live where no one can see them right now, but this is the kind of stuff that does endear you to an even wider audience when they see, oh, they are just like us.
Right, because you don't see that emotion when it's just a regular tournament. There's the golf etiquette. There's still golf etiquette in the President's Cup and Ryder Cup, but it goes a notch up with the competition. It is good. They are human beings, and they do hear the chatter, and it is fun to get back at somebody as a team, and U.S. now 10 in a row with the President's Cup.
Big-time win there for the U.S. Jesse, let's get to another big-time win in the WNBA playoffs and get to that.
Yeah, so we have a finals rematch in the WNBA semifinals. Liberty Aces. Liberty took game one. Breanna Stewart going off with 34 points. Sold-out crowd at the Barclays Center, guys. This is going to be an absolutely electric series. We like what we see so far.
Yeah, Dad, Breanna Stewart. Remember, we mentioned last year's MVP in the regular season going up against Asia Wilson. This year's MVP after a dominant season. You had Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu combining for 55 of the Liberty's points in this game. So going out and doing what they've done all season long, Dad. You and I both picked them to win in this series in the finals rematch. They've been the best team for the entirety of this season, and they showed no signs of slowing down through game one.
Breanna Stewart is just an absolute stud. And they're 4-0. against the Aces. 3-0 in the regular season, now 1-0 in the postseason. I do think they're going to – I don't really think they're going to beat the Aces. I think they're going to win it all. And how about Spike Lee, being right there front and center again, getting into it with Kelsey Plum from the Aces and obviously taking pictures and supporting the Liberty. You got to love Spike Lee doing that.
He's been right in the mix, and we saw the good on that. Sabrina Ionescu talking about how cool that was for her being imbued with all that power of New York. But on the other side, they've created an atmosphere, and the New York Liberty have been one of the teams that have really invested in that group. We know both financially with what they're paying to get all these great players on the team, but in and around that organization, playing where they do in the facilities, it matters, and it shows up on the court and the environment they've created for that. There, winning in Game 1, very important in the WNBA postseason. In WNBA postseason history, teams that go ahead 1-0 in the best-of-5 series win about 77% of the time. That's a 27-8 record. We know the Aces, the defending champs, but, Dad, that probably more applicable on the other side, the 2-3 matchup between the Minnesota Lynx, who have been incredible, and Nafisa Collier, who has finished second in the MVP and been averaging 40 a clip. They dropped the first game to the 3-seed Connecticut Sun, 73-70 in that one.
Yeah, Minnesota scored just 8 points in the fourth quarter. They just got held down in the fourth quarter. Were leading going into the fourth quarter. Got held 8 points, outscored, I think, 16 to 8. It wasn't a high-scoring quarter for anybody, really, by any stretch. But the Sun getting that first win. And again, I do think the Liberty will be favored over the Aces and favored if they win that over the Sun or the Lynx. But this could be a better, more competitive series than the Liberty and Aces, even though everybody was looking forward, I think, more to a rematch of last year's finals.
No doubt, and for the Sun, one of the big reasons why they could be involved in this, one of the trade deadline acquisitions, Marina Mabry, who remember was part of the Chicago Sky, right, gets traded to the Connecticut Sun, paces that team with 20 points, including 8 via three-pointers. So the Notre Dame great doing the things we've seen from her and that family for a long time in South Bend, showing up big time on the court for them. So huge wins to start the second round of the WNBA playoffs. Jesse, let's get to the third from someone that we will likely see on that stage very soon, reminding her haters that she is built different.
Yeah, so Paige Bueckers was in L.A. At the Chargers game yesterday, and the NFL tweeted out a picture of her, that she's there, and apparently the internet was really pressed that it was a school night, but never fear, internet. She took to Twitter to let everyone know she would be in class on Monday morning today. You guys seem to think this means that she was on a PJ, but couldn't she have just taken a red eye? The game was at 1.
Yeah, she was on a PJ.
It was at 1:20 p.m.
She was like the rest of us. She got money like that. Now, this is NIL, man. It's Paige Buckets. What are we talking about here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she needs to get in touch with a financial advisor if she's taking PJs on the regular, because guess what? PJs are really freaking expensive. You think she's just spending that money to hop on the PJ at her age?
You know what I'm thinking? She's flying on the PJ and not paying for the PJ. That's what I'm thinking.
If she's doing that, good on her. If she is paying for a PJ, my lord, she needs somebody to help her immediately figure out her finances.
West Coast to the East is a mad expensive PJ. There's no doubt about it. But, yeah, I don't think she's paying, and I think she's flying private. So good on her. Double thumbs up to you, Paige. Double thumbs up to you.
That was my thought process, just thinking through the timeline of this one and the timing of all of it. It would make a lot more sense there, because you're right. There's a bunch of flights out of LAX. If you're playing this game at SoFi, it's certainly not all that far from it right there in Inglewood. You can make the drive. I live right by this area, so even accounting for LA traffic, it's not necessarily the worst thing. But at the same time, if you're actually going to make it back for class, and I don't know when they dart in Connecticut for UConn and what time these guys and gals have class in the morning, but it just seems like, hey, she was reminding everyone I'm not broke like the rest of you guys. And I think that's wonderful to see her out here living her life and being afforded that opportunity, because she's balling like that, and we can finally reward that. So, you know what, maybe we'll wait for proof. Maybe Paige Bueckers will take us and show us the picture from her window seat on a Delta flight going back across the country, and I'll look up. Show us your support for her and this show by leaving us a great rating and a review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.